Ariana Cole had always been the kind of person who moved quietly through rooms, leaving soft echoes instead of loud footprints. At 29, she had built a steady life for herself as a structural designer, spending her days sketching bridges and buildings that would stand tall long after conversations faded and people forgot who first imagined them. Yet in her own family's world, none of that seemed to matter. One warm Sunday afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the lace curtains of her mother's living room, Ariana sat on the edge of a couch while her relatives gathered around the dining table, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against her patience. "Did you hear?" her Aunt Maribel said, clapping her hands together. "Lucia's fiancé just bought her a new car. A red one. Can you imagine?" Her cousins leaned in, eyes bright, and Ariana's mother, Evelyn, smiled politely, nodding along. Ariana stirred the tea in her cup, watching the spoon circle and circle, feeling as if she, too, was spinning in place. "That's nice," Ariana said softly, but no one heard her. Her brother, Daniel, leaned over and whispered, "You should bring someone like that home someday." Ariana forced a small smile. "Someday," she replied. Inside, she wondered why love and success always had to look so loud to be considered real. The next few weeks passed like a series of rehearsed scenes, each family gathering following the same script. At a birthday dinner for her grandmother, Ariana arrived in a simple blue dress, her hair tied back neatly, feeling comfortable in her own skin. But comfort didn't protect her from commentary. "Still single?" Aunt Maribel asked, slicing into a cake with dramatic flair. "You know, dear, beauty fades. You can't wait forever." Ariana's cousin Mateo chuckled and added, "Or maybe she's waiting for a billionaire to fall from the sky." Laughter bubbled around the table. Ariana's mother glanced at her, then away, pretending to focus on pouring drinks. Ariana placed her fork down slowly. "I'm not waiting for anyone," she said, her voice calm but steady. "I like my life." Mateo raised an eyebrow. "Your life doesn't come with diamonds," he teased. Ariana wanted to tell them about the community center she had helped design, the way children now ran through hallways she had drawn on paper months before. Instead, she swallowed her words and took another bite of cake, tasting sugar and something bitter underneath. 8 months before Lucia's wedding, Ariana met someone who didn't laugh when she talked about load-bearing walls or city planning meetings. His name was Leo Ramirez, and they met in a small bookstore downtown, both reaching for the same dog-eared novel about travel and finding home in unexpected places. "You can take it," Leo had said, smiling. "I've already read it twice." Ariana laughed. "Then you probably know all the best parts." They ended up sitting at the tiny cafe inside the store, talking for hours about work, dreams, and the strange comfort of quiet evenings. Leo worked as a youth counselor, and he spoke about his students with warmth and pride. "They remind me why I do what I do," he said, stirring his coffee. Ariana felt something open in her chest. Over time, their conversations turned into long walks, shared meals, and gentle routines. But Ariana kept Leo tucked away from her family's view, like a delicate glass ornament she feared might shatter under their sharp words. "Why don't you tell them about me?" Leo asked one night. Ariana sighed. "I want to protect this," she said, from their noise. Lucia's wedding arrived in a swirl of gold ribbons, sparkling lights, and whispers of luxury. The venue glowed with chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, and guests paraded in outfits that seemed to compete for attention. Ariana stood near the entrance, smoothing the fabric of her modest green dress, feeling like a quiet painting hung in a gallery of neon signs. Aunt Maribel spotted her immediately. "Ariana," she called out, loud enough to turn heads. "You came alone?" Ariana nodded. "Yes." Maribel leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to make it sting more. "Still no lucky man to show off." Ariana opened her mouth to respond, but her cousin Mateo jumped in. Maybe she left him in her office with her blueprints. More laughter. Ariana's mother stood beside them, silent, her eyes flickering between Ariana and the floor. Ariana felt her chest tighten. She walked toward the balcony, seeking air, wondering why her family felt like strangers who spoke a language she could never learn. Ariana had just stepped outside, letting the cool night brush against her face, when she heard her name again, this time spoken gently. Ariana. She turned to see Leo standing there, his dark suit slightly rumpled, his familiar smile steady and calm. You found me, she said, surprised and relieved all at once. Leo nodded. I figured you might need a friend. Before she could answer, voices from inside followed them out. Aunt Maribel froze when she saw him. And who is this? She asked. Leo extended his hand. I'm Leo, Ariana's partner. The word partner hung in the air. Maribel looked him up and down. And what do you do, Leo? Leo smiled, unbothered. I help kids find their way. He turned to Ariana, then back to the group. And she builds places where people live their lives. She's the strongest person I know. The room grew quiet. Ariana felt heat rise in her eyes, not from embarrassment, but from being seen. For the first time in a long while, the noise around her softened, and her own voice inside grew clear. The quiet that followed Leo's words felt heavier than any insult Ariana had ever carried. Her Aunt Maribel cleared her throat, clearly searching for something clever to say, but nothing came out. Instead, her cousin Mateo shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on the marble floor. Ariana's mother, Evelyn, finally spoke. Ariana, you never mentioned Leo before, she said, her tone careful, like she was stepping on thin ice. Ariana looked at her mother and replied softly, I didn't think anyone would want to hear about him. Leo placed a gentle hand on Ariana's back, not possessive, just present. She didn't hide me, he said kindly. She protected us. That word, us, echoed in Ariana's chest. The music from inside floated out through the open doors, and for a moment, Ariana felt like she was standing between two worlds, the loud, glittering one behind her and the quiet, honest one Leo seemed to carry with him. They returned inside together, and every step Ariana took felt different, like the ground had shifted slightly under her feet. As they passed tables filled with relatives and friends, whispers followed them. That must be him, someone murmured. Ariana's younger cousin, Sophia, approached first, curiosity bright in her eyes. So you're the mysterious boyfriend, she said to Leo with a grin. Leo laughed. I guess I am. Sophia turned to Ariana. You never tell us anything fun. Ariana shrugged. You never ask about the things that matter to me. The words surprised even her. Sophia blinked, then nodded slowly. Maybe that's fair. It was a small moment, but Ariana felt it like a crack in a wall that had stood for years. At their table, Daniel leaned over and whispered, He seems normal. Ariana raised an eyebrow. Is that supposed to be an insult or a compliment? Daniel smirked. I don't know yet. Leo leaned in, catching the last part. I'll take it as a compliment for now. The three of them laughed, and Ariana realized she hadn't laughed like that with her family in a long time. Her grandmother, seated at the head of the table, studied Leo closely. Finally, she spoke. Young man, do you treat my granddaughter well? Leo met her gaze. Every day I try. The old woman nodded once, satisfied. Ariana felt something warm spread through her chest, like a small, steady fire. As dinner was served, Aunt Maribel made another attempt to regain her spotlight. So, Leo, she said loudly, do you plan on giving Ariana the kind of life she deserves? Big house, fancy trips, the whole dream. The table grew quiet again. Ariana opened her mouth to speak, but Leo beat her to it. I think Ariana already has a life she deserves, he said calmly. She's built it herself. Ariana felt her heart thump hard. Maribel sniffed. Love doesn't pay the bills. Leo smiled. Neither does gossip. A few people choked on their drinks, and even Mateo had to hide a grin. Later, Ariana found herself alone with her mother near the dessert table. Evelyn picked at a plate of pastries, not looking up. You seem happy, she said finally. Ariana nodded. I am. Evelyn sighed. I worry about you. I want you to have security. Ariana met her eyes. I do. It just doesn't look like what you imagined. They stood there in silence, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the space between them. Evelyn reached out and adjusted a strand of Ariana's hair, a gesture from childhood. Maybe I need to learn how to see you again, she said quietly. Ariana's throat tightened. I'd like that. The night wore on, and Ariana and Leo danced near the edge of the floor, not caring if they were perfectly in step. You didn't have to come, Ariana whispered. Leo smiled. I wanted to. She rested her head briefly against his shoulder. You didn't rescue me, she said. I know, he replied. You've always been standing. I just stood next to you. The words settled deep inside her, like something she would carry for a long time. In the weeks that followed, Ariana noticed small changes. Her phone rang more often. Sophia called to ask about her projects. Daniel sent her a photo of a bridge he'd passed, joking. Did you build this? Ariana started sharing stories about her work at family dinners. Today, we finished the foundation for a new clinic, she said one night. Her grandmother clapped softly. That's my girl, she said. The room felt warmer, less sharp around the edges. Leo began coming to more family gatherings, and each time, the tension softened a little more. Mateo even asked him about his job. So, what's it like working with kids? Leo answered with stories of small victories and hard days. Ariana watched her family really listen for the first time in a long while. One afternoon, Ariana's Aunt Maribel pulled her aside. You've changed, she said, not unkindly. Ariana smiled. I think I've just stopped shrinking. Maribel considered this, then nodded. Well, it suits you. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Ariana and Leo moved into a small apartment near the river, the kind of place where the windows caught the sunset, just right. They filled it with plants, books, and laughter. Sometimes, they sat on the balcony and talked about the future. What do you want most? Leo asked one evening. Ariana thought for a moment. To keep being brave, she said. He squeezed her hand. I think you're doing great. At the next family celebration, Ariana arrived with her head held high. She wore a simple dress, just like always, but this time, she felt no need to compare herself to anyone else in the room. When someone asked about her job, she answered proudly. When someone teased, she smiled and changed the subject. The room felt different because she felt different. Her mother pulled her into a quiet corner. I'm proud of you, Evelyn said. The words were soft but steady. Ariana blinked back tears. That means a lot, she replied. They hugged, and for the first time in years, it felt easy. One evening, Ariana sat at her desk, sketching a new design for a public library. Leo brought her a cup of tea and watched her work. You know, he said, people will sit in that building and read, fall in love, and dream. Ariana smiled. That's why I do it. She realized then that her life was full of quiet, powerful moments, even if they didn't sparkle. Ariana began sharing her story with others, not as a lesson, but as an invitation. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you you're enough, she said at a community event. But sometimes it helps to hear it out loud. People nodded, some with tears in their eyes, some with smiles. As the seasons changed, Ariana walked along the river with Leo, watching the city lights reflect on the water. She thought about the girl who once stirred her tea in silence, feeling invisible in a crowded room. That girl still lived inside her, but now she walked beside a woman who knew her worth. Ariana squeezed Leo's hand and said, I'm glad I didn't stay quiet. Leo smiled. The world is better when you speak. And for the first time, Ariana believed it, not because someone else told her, but because she finally told herself. A few weeks after the river walk, Ariana received an email that made her pause in the middle of her morning coffee. It was from the city council, inviting her to present her latest community housing project at a public forum. She read it twice, then called out, Leo. He appeared in the doorway, still tying his shoes. What happened? She held up her phone. They want me to speak. In front of everyone. Leo's face lit up. That's amazing. Ariana laughed nervously. It's terrifying. Leo stepped closer and took her hands. You've been building your voice the same way you build your designs, piece by piece. This is just another floor. His words steadied her, and she felt that familiar warmth rise again. The night of the forum, Ariana stood backstage, listening to the hum of the crowd. Her mother and grandmother sat in the front row, Leo beside them. Daniel had even come straight from work, still in his uniform. When her name was called, Ariana walked onto the stage, her heart pounding like a drum. She took a breath and began, "My name is Ariana Cole, and I design spaces for people who are often overlooked." As she spoke about clinics, libraries, and homes, she saw her family watching her, not with judgment, but with attention. When she finished, the applause felt like a wave lifting her off her feet. Afterward, Maribel approached her, clapping slowly. "I didn't know you did all that," she admitted. Ariana smiled gently. "You never ask." Maribel nodded, a little embarrassed. "Well, I'm asking now." They talked about the project, about the families it would help, and for once, the conversation wasn't about status or appearances. It was about impact. Life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings were filled with blueprints and meetings, evenings with shared meals and quiet talks on the balcony. Ariana and Leo started hosting small dinners for friends and family, filling their apartment with the smell of spices and the sound of laughter. Even Mateo brought a bottle of cheap wine once and said, "Don't tell anyone, but I like it here better than fancy restaurants." Ariana laughed. "Your secret's safe with me." One Sunday, Ariana's grandmother asked her to help organize old photo albums. As they flipped through yellowed pages, her grandmother pointed to a picture of a young Ariana holding a toy building set. "You were always like this," she said, stacking things up, making them strong. Ariana felt tears sting her eyes. "I forgot that for a while." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "I never did." Leo proposed on a quiet evening, not with fireworks or crowds, but with a simple question on their balcony as the sun dipped below the river. "Do you want to keep building this life with me?" he asked. Ariana laughed through her tears. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They told the family the next day, and instead of gasps about rings and venues, there were hugs and genuine smiles. Planning the wedding became a family project. Sophia helped choose flowers, Daniel volunteered to handle music, and even Maribel offered to bake the cake. Ariana watched them all work together and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging that didn't come with conditions. On the day Ariana and Leo married, the ceremony was held in a small park near one of Ariana's completed projects. Children ran along the paths, and the breeze carried the scent of grass and flowers. Ariana walked toward Leo, not feeling like a girl who needed approval, but like a woman stepping into her own future. Years later, Ariana stood in the doorway of a new library, watching people stream inside. Her mother stood beside her, Leo on the other side. "You built this," Evelyn said softly. Ariana shook her head. "We all did in different ways." She thought of every conversation, every moment of courage, every time she chose to speak instead of shrink. As the sun set, Ariana sat on a bench with Leo, listening to the quiet murmur of readers inside the building. She thought about invisibility, about how easy it had once been to believe she didn't matter. Now she knew better. She leaned her head on Leo's shoulder and said, "I used to wait for the world to see me." Leo smiled. "And now?" Ariana smiled back. "Now I see myself. And that's enough." Time moved forward in gentle, almost unnoticed steps. Ariana and Leo's life filled with ordinary miracles, morning light spilling across the kitchen table, the sound of pages turning late at night, the soft hum of the city outside their window. Ariana began mentoring young designers at her firm, sitting across from nervous graduates who reminded her of herself years ago. "Your voice matters," she told them, tapping a pencil against a stack of blueprints. "Even when no one is listening yet." One evening, a young woman named Priya stayed behind and said quietly, "I didn't think someone like me could ever lead a project." Ariana smiled. "I didn't think so either once. But here I am. And you will be too." Walking home that night, Ariana felt the strange joy of becoming the person she once needed. At the next big family gathering, Ariana noticed how different the room felt. Conversations weren't circling around who drove what car or who wore what brand. Instead, people asked about Leo's students, about Ariana's projects, about Sophia's plans to travel. Maribel even raised a toast. To building things that last, she said, glancing at Ariana with a small, sincere smile. Ariana lifted her glass, feeling a quiet pride settle in her chest. She realized then that change didn't always arrive in dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it came in softer moments, in how people learned to speak differently. One rainy afternoon, Ariana visited the community center she had helped design years before. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, and a mural of bright colors stretched across one wall. A little boy tugged at her sleeve. "Did you make this place?" he asked. Ariana knelt down to his level. "I helped," she said. The boy grinned. "It's my favorite place." As he ran off, Ariana felt a lump in her throat. She thought about all the times her own worth had been questioned, and how, here, in this simple moment, it was undeniable. That night, Ariana and Leo sat on their balcony again, the river below reflecting a sky full of stars. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Leo asked. Ariana nodded. "Sometimes. But I think every hard moment pushed me here." She looked at him, then out at the city she loved. "I used to measure my life by what other people expected. Now I measure it by what feels true." Leo squeezed her hand. "That sounds like a pretty good way to live." Ariana leaned back, breathing in the cool night air, feeling steady and whole. Years later, when Ariana's story was shared by those she had mentored, by families who lived in the buildings she designed, and by friends who had found courage in her words, she smiled at how far that quiet girl on the couch had come. She no longer thought of herself as invisible. She thought of herself as rooted, strong, steady, and reaching upward. Sitting beside Leo, watching the city glow, Ariana whispered, "I'm glad I kept going." Leo kissed her temple. "So am I." And in that simple exchange, Ariana felt the deep, lasting truth she had spent a lifetime discovering, that her worth had always been there, waiting patiently for her to claim it.